For centuries, every civilization has operated under a comforting delusion that their money, their banks, and their governments' financial guarantees are permanent. They look back at history and dismiss the collapses of Rome or 18th century France as failures of less sophisticated systems. They tell themselves, our time is different. History, however, tells a consistent and brutal truth. Every single system of paper promise is inherently fragile. Failure isn't an anomaly, it's an inevitability. Our journey today isn't about predicting the next crisis, but about understanding the timeless lessons of economic survival. What assets, what skills, what strategies actually endure the great transfer of wealth that accompanies every monetary collapse? Let's start with the fundamental premise, the illusion of trust. A currency is just a promise, and that promise is only as good as the credibility of the institution behind it. The moment that credibility falters, the currency's value can vanish almost instantaneously. Consider the Byzantine Empire and its legendary coin, the Solidus. For 800 years, the Solidus was the world's reserve currency, a symbol of immutable stability. But the empire, desperate to fund its wars and maintain a vast bureaucracy, began to debase it. First subtly, then overtly, they reduced the gold purity within the coin. This broken promise systematically destroyed the economic stability of the empire. Once trust was gone, the Solidus became just another artifact of a fallen power. This same pattern repeated itself violently during the American Civil War. Both the Union and the Confederacy resorted to massive fiat money printing, the greenbacks and the graybacks, to finance their conflict. While the North managed to maintain some stability, the South experienced catastrophic hyperinflation. Saved earnings and salaries turned worthless overnight, a stark illustration of how losing a monetary anchor transforms a stable society into economic chaos. Look also at the French Revolution, where the assignats, initially backed by confiscated church land, were printed into oblivion. This didn't just devalue savings. It fueled widespread riots and starvation. This history confirms that regardless of the backing, whether it's gold, land, or a government, decree overprinting always leads to collapse. But financial collapse isn't always a slow internal erosion. Sometimes, systemic shocks violently redistribute wealth. Take the Black Death in the 14th century. It eliminated a huge portion of Europe's labor force. Suddenly, surviving workers commanded massive leverage and demanded higher wages. For those few individuals who held substantial liquidity cash or easily convertible assets, the crisis represented an immense opportunity. They were able to acquire land and property at dramatically depressed values, fundamentally reshaping the social and economic order of the entire continent. More recently, we saw the deadly trap of foreign-denominated debt during the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Nations like Thailand had borrowed heavily in US dollars. When their local currencies collapsed, the value of those dollar debts skyrocketed relative to their income. This crisis proved that sovereign debt, especially in a currency you don't control, is a financial time bomb waiting to detonate. And perhaps the most sobering modern warning comes from Lebanon. Just a few years ago, its banking system was deemed functional and reliable. Then, it locked away customer deposits, and the local currency plummeted by over 90%. This is a critical, contemporary reminder. The money you believe you have in a bank is not actually yours. It is an unsecured loan you've made to that institution, and it's subject to that institution's failure. This brings us to the myth of too big to fail. The size and reputation of a financial institution are never a guarantee of safety. In the 14th century, the great banking houses of Florence were seen as impregnable pillars of the global economy. They collapsed after European monarchs, most notably Edward III of England, defaulted on massive loans they had been given. Depositors, from wealthy noblemen to everyday citizens, lost everything. Reputation means nothing when the underlying debt goes bad. So, if paper promises fail, banks collapse, and even governments default, what exactly survives when money becomes meaningless? The answer lies in shifting our focus from paper wealth to real value. History teaches us there are 4 enduring pillars of financial security. First, hard assets. These are tangible things that cannot be printed or easily confiscated. Think gold, productive farmland, and strategic real estate. While the prices of these assets fluctuate, their intrinsic value as a store of wealth persists through every crisis. Second is liquidity. I don't mean bank deposits. I mean having readily available cash or assets that can be converted quickly. During a crisis, liquidity is king. It allows the holder to exploit massive opportunities, buying valuable assets when panicked sellers flood the market. Every crisis is a great transfer of wealth from the unprepared to the prepared. Third, skills and production. The ability to create tangible value is both recession-proof and collapse-proof. A farmer who can grow food, a plumber who can fix pipes, or a tradesman who can build shelter holds inherent value that exceeds any fluctuating exchange rate. People who produce real things will always command value, even in a barter economy. And finally, avoiding uncontrolled debt, specifically, avoiding debt denominated in a currency that is not native to your primary income stream. In times of hyperinflation and crisis, debt becomes a powerful form of leverage, working against you. Every economic crisis is fundamentally a massive transfer of wealth. It moves assets from those who placed blind faith in paper promises and government guarantees to those who understood the fragility of the system and held real, tangible value. The lessons of Byzantium, Florence, and Lebanon are crystal clear. Trust the value you can create and the assets you can hold, not the promise written on paper. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this perspective valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content that challenges conventional financial wisdom. We'll see you in the next one.